All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another World Cup check-in. All right. So round one is done for the group stage matches. We've had every team has played one game, so that means that there have been 12 games so far. And so I'm gonna take you through. I know I'm wearing a U.S. jersey. I just got back from watching the U.S. Women, but I'm going to talk through every other game first before I get to the U.S. Women because, well, I saved the best for last, all that stuff. So we'll start with France and South Korea Friday. Watched this game for the first half and then took a nap through the second half. I thought it was going to be a little bit more competitive, to be honest, but France came out and they were dominant, and South Korea just didn't seem to show up, basically, what happened. So, yeah, 4-0 was this total score. It's kind of expected, but, it was definitely a statement from France that they were going to try their best to make a statement and to say that, look, we're dangerous. Contrast that to the next game, which started on Saturday. So we had Germany versus China. Germany ranked 2 in the world, whereas China ranked 16th. Certainly, you thought that this would be a little bit less of a challenge, especially since France went 4-0. And let's see, South Korea is ranked 14th compared to France's 4th. So you thought that Germany was going to run away with it, do a whole, France went 4-0 to a team that they were, 10 places better than. But this one went pretty well for China. It certainly showed that, this Chinese team seems to be a little bit more organized, or at least better than what it was. The final score was 1-0 to Germany, but certainly had questions of whether or not Germany whether or not Germany was, worthy of that second rank in the world, and whether or not, just in general, they'll have the skill to beat a better team than China. Of course, you could also flip it and say, well, China might surprise some people here. I think in recent times we forget that China was, at the finals of, the 1999 World Cup, and they held the U.S. to get to penalty shootout. So China is not just a pushover, really, and certainly they seem a little bit more organized. Another bad thing for Germany is that one of their players has a broken toe and is likely out for the rest of the tournament. So I don't know what position she plays, which is something I probably should look up, but certainly when you've got a World Cup roster, you have 23 players, so you need 11 on the field at a time, and if you're losing players, that's just not good to injury at all. So hopefully that doesn't bite them. Well, actually, I mean, I'm biased, so I'm hoping that affects them, and that if the U.S. have to play them, which I think they might, if depending on how the group stages work, it would be better for them not to have one of their better players or not. All right, moving on. So we had Spain versus South Africa. So South Africa was a debutante nation. This match started off really fun in that South Africa scored first, which was nice. So it was the first goal for them. And then video assistant referee or review, VAR, kind of took a little bit of an annoyance. I think there were 2 penalty kicks in this, and I was kind of... the big thing with VAR is there's this whole clear and obvious error that keeps coming up, whether or not the referees made a clear and obvious error and there should be like a penalty kick being given, or something like that. And for me, it's like, okay, if it's clear and obvious, it should take you like 30 seconds to decide. If it's not clear and obvious, this is when it gets to the sort of critics start asking questions like, why is it taking so long? It shouldn't be, like that. Of course, the decisions, I guess, were sort of right. And I guess that's what we're looking for. But if you're going to write clear and obvious in the rules, I think that you've got to make those decisions pretty quick. Regardless, Spain came out, South Africa got a red card, and they ended up winning pretty easily. So it's interesting to see that. We'll see how that works out in their group. Next up was Norway versus Nigeria. Norway, I, of course, made my initial prediction. I was like, okay, I don't know how Norway's going to do without Ada Hegerberg. They're the best player in the world, and it seems like they're going to do okay because they won 3-0. Then again, Nigeria is one of those higher-ranked 30 teams, so we'll just have to see. Next game was our first upset. So we did have a little bit of a shocker in terms of that. We had, I think, two nations that were kind of a surprise in terms of the results. And then I would also say there was a good showing from Cameroon and a good showing from New Zealand, but we'll get to that. So Australia played Italy. Australia, of course, ranked 6th. Italy 15th. You would expect Australia, especially with Sam Kerr, who's a very lethal goal scorer. You would have expected them to do really well and ease it through. But Italy was organized, even though they were, I think the stats were like they had just over 100 passes to like a ridiculous amount for Australia. Italy held out. Let me actually pull up the stats here so I can just explain to you sort of the beauty of soccer sometimes, because it's results like this, especially for the club team that I support, which is not as it's not a Manchester United. They're not going to dominate possession, but there's always that hope that you'll have one of these games like this. So I've currently pulled up just the stats for it, and I'll go through. So Australia on shots, 16-6, possessions, 64% to 36%, passes, 457 to 260. Just in terms of those things, especially that possession stat, which means they had the ball more, and they were taking more shots, they had more possession, all of that. Australia should have won. They had more chances, they had more shots, all of that. But because of just soccer and the randomness of it and the unpredictability of this sport, Italy won 2-1. And they won, frankly, in dramatic fashion. They think they scored in like the 95th minute, which is the 5th minute of stoppage time or injury time. And there's some history there in the 2006 World Cup on the men's side of Italy doing that to an Australian team. So it's just fun. But, you get to those games where the dominant team doesn't take their chances. They have an off day, and then you get the one team that's organized. They stay with it. They stay in the game, and then they end up winning at the end. And that's what I love about this result. I don't see Australia struggling out of their group, but certainly Italy made a statement and helped them in their chances to get to the next stage. Brazil playing Jamaica. Marta, their best player, was out injured. Again, that's a blow for them, but it seems like they did okay. They won 3-0 against Jamaica. Jamaica, again, is the worst ranked team here. I didn't expect much from them, but I still like the underdogs. But still, Brazil did okay. England versus Scotland, I did pay attention to this match. I was hoping for, again, an upset for Scotland. But England ended up winning 2-1. The question, they're ranked 3rd in the world. The questions kind of started when you're thinking, okay, should this England side be, should we be worried because they didn't score as much? I think you chalk it up to a rivalry and the fact that it's Scotland versus England, and that Scotland it's at their first World Cup. They're not the worst team in the world. So, in fact, I think they're the best ranked team that made it to the World Cup. So, as far as the debuts go, I think South Africa, Jamaica, and Chile, those are the other three, and they're all ranked lower or, in their 30s, 38, 40, or 39, 49, and 53 compared to Scotland's 20. So I think that they certainly could live up to that challenge. It was 2-1 in the end, I think I mentioned. And there was another VAR incident here where, you thought, well, handball, something or other. But ultimately, Scotland looked pretty good at the end in the second half. I thought they came back pretty well. They just couldn't get that second goal to tie it. So it looks like they might do a lot better than anything. The next game, Argentina and Japan. So, Argentina, again, they've been to the World Cup before, but of course they're ranked 37th. Don't expect much. Japan ranked 7th, so there's that 30 difference. But just because of the World Cup and just what happens here, they got a point out of it, which, points in the group stage are always valuable. And certainly Argentina then have a chance to play a weaker team and say, look, I can then, maybe they get a win, and now you've got 4 points, and that typically can slip you through. And all that, and that's really what the group stage is about, is getting to the knockout stage. Japan, of course, they're a good team. I think they're just really young. I know that they have the potential to play. They'll probably get to the knockout round, maybe. I just think that they will suffer from inexperience, and that's, we won't see sort of a competitive Japan team until maybe an Olympics or maybe the next World Cup. When they have that experience, when they have older players, I think they're just in that cycle. So as much as I like the Japanese, I think they will not play too much of a role, but it's certainly a good result for Argentina. If they get another result like it, or win or draw, certainly it looks better for them moving forward. The next match, I think this it was interesting because it was Argentina, Japan, and then Canada and Cameroon yesterday, and those were the only two games. There was only one goal scored between the two games. It was kind of a snooze fest, but that's because Cameroon came out and against the Canada side, and they played really well. Canada did ultimately get their one goal that they needed, not from Christine Sinclair, funnily enough, but they still got their win given more time. So there's these teams that have looked much better. They've been organized, they've been motivated, and this is what people then say, okay, look, the World Cup is getting much more competitive, and we are certainly progressing the women's game in general, which is always a good thing. Another result, New Zealand versus the Netherlands. This was early this morning. I thoroughly enjoyed watching this game. New Zealand had the better of the chances early on for the most of it. Netherlands had most of the possession. New Zealand is ranked 19th, Netherlands 8th. But it looked very much like they were even, on par with each other. It wasn't until the 90th minute, I think, or 91st minute, where the Netherlands finally broke through New Zealand. It's a real shame because New Zealand had two great chances, one off the crossbar, and one, they had another shot. And if they had put those in, we could be telling a whole different story with that. But the Netherlands just squeaked by on that. And now on to Group F. So while I was making my way to the place that I was watching, Chile and Sweden played. Chile, again, making their World Cup debut against Sweden, a very experienced World Cup side. I think they've been to every one. I'd have to check on that. But, yeah, Ultimately, Sweden get the job done late. Chile was very, very defensive in this. I don't think they really had that many chances to score. When I was watching the tail end of it, when I did arrive at the place I was looking for, I was absolutely like, there was no way that Chile was going to get out of defending. They were just defending, defending, defending. So, unfortunately, I don't think I predicted them moving on, and it looks like that's not going to be the case. Certainly because they've got the United States on Sunday, and well, judging by the result of the United States against Thailand, it's certainly a scary prospect. So, what I mean by that is that the United States played, and they scored 13 goals. Yes, you heard that right, 13 goals against Thailand's 0 goals. So Thailand are ranked 34th in the world. Chile are ranked 39th. So this result, I would say a win was expected. That was what it was. The question wasn't whether or not the United States would win. It was a question of how much would they win by. Would it be a scrappy win, 1-0, or would it be a blowout? And this was the maximum blowout you could do. For context on this match, the record for goals scored in one single match was set by Germany against Argentina in 2007, which was 11-0. That was the biggest victory and most goals scored in a single match. The U.S. obviously just broke that record today, and they did that, and they also broke the record for women's or men's game. This is the biggest World Cup victory ever, and it really isn't surprising why, simply because the United States have 6 attacking players who are just phenomenal. You've got Rose Lavelle, Alex Morgan, and Megan Rapinoe. That's your starting 3. And then the next 3 players that they could call upon are Carly Lloyd, the hero of the finals in 2015, who scored a hat trick in like 15 minutes or something like that. Mallory Pugh, a young talent who's very quick, and then you've got Kristen Press, also an accomplished goal scorer. When you can bring those 3 players on to replace your already 3 lethal things, you know that the United States can score goals, and they proved it in this one, and they caused a bunch of controversy for doing so, which I kind of think there shouldn't be, but that's just how it is. So Alex Morgan scored 5 goals. You've got 2 other players scoring 2 goals. Everybody there were 7 different players who scored, which is always good. The one blemish for me is that they scored 13 goals, which I'm superstitious, so that's kind of unlucky. Hopefully it doesn't prove true, and they score more than that. The other sort of record that they could go for is the most amount of goals scored for a whole World Cup session, which was 25, set by the 1991 U.S. women. So they're already over halfway done. They have 6 more games potentially for the U.S. That they could score basically 2 in each, and they would get 25. So, but again, judging by this results, and again, we'll see what happens on Sunday, because Chile are 5 places worse than Thailand, and the way that they defended against Sweden, it looks like it's going to be a big slaughter again. So, my one concern for the U.S. is that we just don't exhaust everybody, and that we don't get too carried away as far as forgetting certain things. But I think these women are professional enough to really lock it in, and certainly, my big thing would be to rest the players that need rest, make sure that you're not taking any extra risks with certain players, because once the 3rd game for the group, when we start playing Sweden, which is when we'll start playing harder opposition, that's when we're going to really need to turn it on and figure things out. So I think the way that this group stage has gone for the United States, or will go, and is panning out to be, I think we're going to see a lot of good things going forward. Now, as far as the controversy is concerned, people are, I read on Twitter, people are like, okay, should we have, after 6 or 7 goals, taken the foot off the gas? And yeah, it'd be, it's like, okay, you don't want to completely humiliate somebody. I personally think nobody would have said that. I think the arguments from former women's national team players, like Abby Wambach, she said the men wouldn't get that. They would just say, go and go. And I'll connect that to the 7-1 victory of Germany over Brazil in the quarterfinals or semifinals, I think. The semifinals of the 2014 World Cup, where Brazil scored they scored 7 goals, which in the men's game is unheard of. 7 goals, against a Brazil side. Like, Brazil is supposed to be so great, and Germany just was that good. They ended up winning the World Cup that year. So telling the United States to take their foot off the gas against Thailand is like, why care? Just score. Let them have it. Yeah, it sucks for Thailand, but my take on it is, look, okay, so if Thailand doesn't want to get embarrassed, they invest more in the game. They try and get more money towards it and just help out their team, so that the next time they get to a World Cup and they face the United States, the result doesn't look so bad and all that. And so, I don't see why you should take the foot off the gas. I know the whole, being sort of polite and all that, and I certainly had some thoughts like that at times, but, if you take your foot off the gas, then you might, dampen morale, because now you've got Lindsey Horan, Sam Mewis, Rose Lavelle, Mallory Pugh, I think, all 4 of them now got, on their World Cup debuts, they have goals, so their family can enjoy that. They can enjoy that. Lindsey Horan has worked her butt off. She missed the last World Cup, and she was devastated. All of these players now have that experience. They can say they scored a goal at a World Cup. Now, of course, they would want to score against a bigger opponent. That's the next step, and all that. So, hopefully they can do that. But definitely I'm on the side of just keep scoring. I would have preferred 14 goals or 12 goals, again, because I'm superstitious. Regardless, it's a great win. It is what it is. It happened, and, trying to slow down, a galloping horse is difficult, I would say. Not that I've actually done that, but it's like trying to stop a freight train, any sort of fast thing coming at you. Trying to stop that, as a coach, I wouldn't want to, because ultimately, what does that say about you? You want your team to be ruthless. You want your team to score as many goals as possible, especially when you're talking about goal differential in group stage matches. So the other big thing that came up, and I think is the only real argument you have, is the amount of celebration that the U.S. did, apparently. I kind of tuned out halfway through I tuned out after probably the 6th or 7th goal. I was just talking with people and sort of paying attention as the game was progressing. I personally don't enjoy, running. I enjoy winning and all that stuff, but running away with a game, I like the tension. That's what I like soccer for. I digress. But regardless, I was talking with somebody else and going through. So I didn't see how big of celebrations the U.S. were doing, but supposedly they were doing a little bit of excessive celebrations, it seemed, which could be a little bit insulting again for Thailand. Me personally, I think you should just enjoy the moment. Again, 4 people scored, their first World Cup goals. You should be super happy about that. Scoring a goal is the hardest thing to do in soccer, and doing so at a World Cup is even better. And it's not the United States' fault that they were drawn with Thailand or drawn with any other team. It's just how things happened. It's just, again, maybe I just can't see it. I know the argument. It's just, no. Just enjoy the moment, score goals, do whatever. They're a part of history. Yeah, Thailand's on the wrong side of history, being, the team that got scored on. But ultimately, really, them playing Chile, for a third place is what's ultimately going to happen, is whether or not they get third place in the group or fourth place. And whether or not they might even, be a best third place team. It's really, you just have to look at these things a little bit cynically and say, well, it really, at this rate, what are you going to do? Did you expect to win? No, the United States were expected to win. And, this was the narrative, and, better luck next time. So, when it comes to the standings, really there's not much to tell. I'll just cover goal differential, which I touched on a little bit. So, if you're not familiar with how tables work for soccer, or like the standings work, there's a thing called goal differential, which is ultimately just how many goals did you score versus how many goals did you let other teams score on you. So after one game, the United States has a goal differential of 13. They scored 13. They didn't let in any goals from the opposition. In their same group, looking at Group F, Sweden scored 2. They didn't let in any, which gives them a goal differential of 2. Thailand and Chile will have the reverse of that. So -2 for Chile because they played Sweden and lost by 2 goals, and Thailand, of course, by 13. So it's always important to get that goal differential, because if you are tied on points, so for a win you get 3 points, a draw you get 1 point. So let's say the United States beats Chile, Sweden beats Thailand, and then they end up drawing the next game, or the U.S. and Sweden draw. That means they both have 7 points. But because they have a better goal differential, the United States would be on top. That's always important to consider in soccer, and that's always, that's why I'm like, okay, you have to score more. They don't need the 13 goals, but it's just Thailand let them score 13 goals. I forgot to mention, and at the end of the game, back to the whole, we should have stopped. At the end of the game, the U.S. women all went over to various Thailand players, and they basically were consoling them. It's never fun to be the losing side, right? Especially on that big of a stage by that big of a margin. And so, I thought it was brilliant sportsmanship from, or sportswomanship, if you want to call it that. That just came to me. But I thought it was brilliant from them because, their job in the moment is to score as many goals as possible. That's the name of the game. Afterwards, they turn back into, the standard, comrades. But for the 90 minutes that you're playing, it's your opponents. You've got to beat your opponents, and it doesn't matter how you do it or by, how hard you do it. That's just how it is. That's the nature of competition, and I think that's a good thing to see from the women. So anyway, back to goal differential. Ultimately, the United States, of course, didn't need that big of a goal differential, but it's certainly now it's basically a guarantee that they will be the better of Sweden if they're equal on points. I don't think that will happen. I think the U.S. women are going to want to exact a little bit of revenge on Sweden, certainly, if I were Chile, I would be quivering in my boots because they played very defensively against Sweden, but Sweden is no United States, so that'll be something to look forward to. So that's it for the past. Let's look forward to the future. Let's see what we have as far as good matches. So already I'm seeing 2 matches tomorrow that you should definitely pay attention to. Don't wake up at 8 a.m. or you could. We've got Nigeria versus South Korea. I think that'll be a competitive match, South Korea being 14th, Nigeria being 38th. I'm hoping that South Korea comes out a little bit harder than they did against France. And I think that they have something to prove in that sense. Both of those teams need to win or need points. They both lost, so they're going to need to do that. But the 2 games that are juicy, so to speak, are we've got Germany versus Spain and France versus Norway. So Germany, of course, they had that injured player, and they also are second ranked versus Spain. Spain had a great start. They got a first win. Now we're going to see whether or not Spain can take the next step and establish themselves as a power in women's soccer. They're already that in the men. So hopefully we'll see an entertaining match, and we'll see whether or not Germany is faltering a little bit, whether or not they're really up to snuff. This on the other match, France versus Norway. Again, we're going to look at, okay, well, is this French team the real deal? Can they deal with a tougher opponent in Norway, and certainly in a Norwegian team, again, without Ada Hegerberg? We'll see where they stack up. This is a good litmus test for how well each team stacks up. On Thursday, we've got Australia versus Brazil. Australia is going to want to win. I don't know if Martz is coming back for Brazil, so, that could be very interesting, especially if Australia and Brazil draw. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Australia to win that final game. Then we go South Africa, China. China, I think, are going to do rather well with South Africa here. They played well against who they play? I'm stupid. They played well against Germany the other day, and so I'm very much thinking that they'll play well against South Africa, believing in their ability to get a win and to move on. Japan versus Scotland, again, I think that'll be interesting. Japan, again, being young, we'll see if they can bounce back from not beating Argentina. They're going to play a Scotland team that is well organized and raring to go. So that'll be also something, an interesting one to see on Friday. Jamaica versus Italy. I think, again, Jamaica, the worst team here. Italy getting that surprise win are going to probably get another win there. They're going to be super happy with how they played and going to want to build on that. England versus Argentina. We're going to get a repeat probably of the Battle of the Falkland War, whatever that little conflict was with, Theresa May or whatever it was between England and Argentina, where England kind of dismantled Argentina militarily. This way, they're going to do it in women's football. I think they're definitely going to do well. Argentina, though, they do have a point, so maybe they're going to look for another point and hedge their bets for when they play against Scotland. All right. Then we've got the Netherlands versus Cameroon. Netherlands got their win. Cameroon, it might be the same story that they did against Canada, where they held out for a long time and then the Netherlands broke through, or Canada broke through. The Netherlands might do the same thing. And then we've got Canada versus New Zealand, which I think is one of those compelling matches. New Zealand played really well against the Netherlands. Canada should be a little bit better, so we'll see what happens there. Group F action, Sweden versus Thailand. Hopefully Thailand plays a little bit better and they're not, too terribly scarred for the U.S. We'll just have to see. and then the United States playing Chile, and I've already gone into that. That's at 11 a.m. on Sunday. That's when the United States plays next, and there is a official watch party at Gallagher Way in next to Wrigley in Chicago. I'm personally not going to go to that because, again, it might be a blowout win, and blowout wins are kind of boring. Also, it's at 11 a.m., and I would have to take a train or drive to Wrigleyville, and it's kind of not worth it. So that's what your next match day looks like. Thanks for tuning in. I know it's a little bit longer. I had a lot to talk about for various reasons. I might, next round, I might try and do a couple days here and there to talk about each of these, sort of bigger matches, which I think is a good idea. I just think that this first round was a little bit interesting. There were a couple things here and there, but certainly good for the U.S., and we're looking okay. I still have doubts in my mind, but those doubts won't really be quelled until we play Sweden next. We play Sweden next Thursday, which is truly the bigger test. So, with that said, thanks for tuning in. Sorry for the longer video, but hopefully this helps explain stuff and kind of keep you in the loop. So, thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.